All right, welcome everyone to our fifth episode here with Sound HSA. My name is John Gordon, co-founder of Sound HSA, the first Bitcoin native health savings account platform. Really pleased to be joined today by Arniel Sia. He is the founder of OpenPath Finance. Arniel, how's it going today?
It's going good. Thank you for having me on, John.
Of course, thanks for being here. Would love to start out in hearing some of your background, Arniel, in your personal and professional journey that you took to starting your own firm, and particularly some of your Bitcoin journey and what led you to Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, a little background and context on me. So I run an accounting firm called OpenPath Finance. We're tax advisory and bookkeeping. Really, what that means is we serve Bitcoin owners and business owners in reducing their tax burden so they can keep more money in their own pockets. How I really got into the Bitcoin world and really into this business. So I'm a CPA, and I used to work in the public accounting industry, but then spent most of my career in the tech sector, software development. And people who I primarily served then were bootstrapped companies. And so I saw a lot of the same issues with starting a company from nothing to scaling it up. Well, one particular company that I worked with, we ended up selling that company, had an amazing exit to Fortune 500 company, actually Fortune 50 company. And as the team was discussing what they were going to be doing next, the CEO, he approached me and said, "Hey, my next project, I'm actually going to start a Bitcoin mining operation." This was 2019, around 2020. And so he had been giving me resources and talking to me about Bitcoin for a while. But then that was really my first foray into actually working with Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. And so they were our very first customer. And that's how the business started. And so we help customers from, those just first starting out their businesses to scaling them up to successful businesses, who are making killing out there and serving their clients. So that's a little bit of what we do and how I got into this.
Awesome. And when considering tax strategy and business finance, particularly for small business owners or medium, larger business owners that feel the burden when it comes to taxes and accounting, and really the strategy that you can have as a business owner, understanding your local jurisdiction, national tax structure, like what's maybe the first thing you look for, or you look to fix, questions you have when a new client comes to you?
First, I look to see what are their goals. Not every company is the same, and not every person is the same. We start really with the person in question, whether that's the owner, the CEO, and we look to see what their personal goals are. And many times, there's a Bitcoin component to that, whether they're holding Bitcoin in treasury or they're using Bitcoin more as a personal savings vehicle. We take a look at the dichotomy of that and then figure out how should we best structure this for them, and then also layer in various strategies to then help them reduce their taxes. So I'd say for a business owner, a lot of that is entity structuring, and then within those entity structures, what are some of these untapped strategies that they may or may not know about and that they need help with executing, implementing, documenting, and then ultimately, how does that reflect on their day-to-day accounting with the bookkeeping as well as the taxes as well. And I'm happy to go further into specific strategies on here, especially on the health side.
Yeah, we're here. We launched the health savings account in Bitcoin, and the HSA has been around for 20 plus years, and it is the only triple tax advantaged product out there. Do you see, are your clients generally utilizing HSAs today, even before getting to the Bitcoin component, given that there are 40 million account holders, almost $200 billion in value. Is that a strategy or something that you were already seeing with your clients or steering them in that direction, or do you feel like it's still an underutilized tool?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we had HSAs. We were recommending HSAs even before you and I had connected, and I had learned about the Sound HSA product that you are all at that time about to launch. And so it's been amazing to see you guys and just seeing the progression of this product. But even before Sound HSA was a thing, even before there was a Bitcoin backed HSA product, the HSA in of itself is an amazing tax saving strategy. And for those who aren't familiar, um, from a high level, as you said, triple tax advantaged. So really what that means is when you contribute into an HSA, those dollars are tax deductible. And then depending on the HSA structure and setup, you might be able to invest into different assets or stocks, funds within the HSA, and the growth of those assets are completely tax free, which is why this Bitcoin backed product is amazing. And I've been bringing this up like crazy to customers who are eligible for this. And then the third item is with the deduction, tax-free spending on health expenses, qualified health expenses within the HSA product. But yeah, it's I think healthcare. If we take a step back and just look at the fiat landscape, the macro landscape, healthcare has definitely been one of the hardest hit areas, as you know, when it comes to just this fiat degradation of the system. Each year it seems like insurance companies and medical providers, the costs just keep going up and up. And there's not very much that we as consumers can do, but we as patients can do about it. And it makes it very hard for planning too, especially. So I have a fairly large family. I have a family of six, four children.
That's
My
awesome.
oldest just turned 10 this past weekend. But, in the past, it was very hard for us to really plan for these different expenses, include even when we had, before we had the HSA and when we were just looking at different health plans, health insurance, when I had full-time job previously, it was overwhelming and I just felt stuck. But I think the HSA gives us back that power to pick and choose who are the providers and where do I really want my money to go. And so not only is there the tax benefit to it, but I think it really, the HSA in of itself, like it helps us to be more sovereign and helping us to make better choices for where our money goes when it comes to healthcare and health expenses.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more here. And having worked in the healthcare industry and also helping business owners integrate a Bitcoin strategy, you see how much that line item continues to grow from a health insurance perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
for businesses with under 50 employees, you don't have to offer health insurance. Once you're over 50 employees, you by law are required to provide health insurance options for your employees. But it's typically then more expensive. Traditional group plans can be difficult to acquire even as a smaller business owner. More and more businesses are going to the self-insured route as well and taking alternative approaches. And that's conversations we're having with business owners too on how to even navigate the whole health benefits space as it's continued to get more convoluted. And then from an individual perspective, as you mentioned, picking that plan or even picking the doctor. Ultimately, what we can do now is save value in the form of Bitcoin that, as you said, isn't going to be taxed on those gains, and save that for ourselves and for our family's future health spend, because
Exactly.
we are all human and we're going to have some health needs here, whether they come up as a necessity or they're on the preventative side and they're more proactive. I know you've done a lot of traveling and exploring with your family as well, but even being able to then travel with some of that value and connect if you're in a different city or even a different country. Hey, here's some savings I've set aside for my health. Do you see a lot of your clients, are they offering even health insurance today, or is that something that they're usually leaving to the employees, or a lot of your clients are kind of self-employed and they're mostly dealing with it for them and their families rather than kind of taking that company employee perspective?
So when dealing with clients, I typically have two major groups. So on one side, I have high earning W-2 earners. They have an income paycheck with an employer. And on the other side, I have the small business owner. And typically the gap for them, so on the high income earner on this side, a lot of the times they don't even realize that they have the HSA available to them. Or if they do have an HSA, it's highly underutilized. And so a lot of my education with them is discussing what the HSA looks like and how to maximize those benefits. And typically we go through a workflow of, if you take a consultation with us and our team, how to best optimize the tax accounts. So one of them is Roth IRA, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a whole debate about that, just even within the Bitcoin circles and Bitcoin community of, do you want your Bitcoin, do you want your funds held into these tax advantage accounts? Maybe, but in general, the flow I typically say is, let's first get your Roth IRA fully maxed out, and then let's do the HSA, because those funds don't expire; they roll over year to year. I mean, it's your money, and so you can do with it as you please. So that's on the high income earner, of just really educating them that there is an HSA available, as long as they have the insurance requirements
Mm-hmm.
met. And then also how to really maximize the use of their HSA. And then on the small business side, a lot of the gap there is a lot of them don't have insurance, don't know what to do with insurance. Now, health expenses can be a large part of our our living expenses, from year to year. And so I tell my business owner clients, like, hey, the HSA is available, and it's something I highly recommend that you take advantage of as well. And when I tell them, there's a new Bitcoin backed HSA product that just came to market here, um, they are highly interested and intrigued to know that there's a tax vehicle that can help them save on taxes, especially when it comes to medical expenses. But not only that, there's also a Bitcoin component on there to help them further make that go farther and keep that value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the on the Bitcoin side, typically a lot of business owners or sectors have kind of stayed away or think I don't want to get involved because of maybe even the capital gains tax or whatever tax rules are out there. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions business owners have about just Bitcoin tax rules and tax treatment as it is today, with Bitcoin being
Um,
treated as property instead of money?
yeah, that's a great question. So there's so many places we can take that. Um, and really, Bitcoin's been around for what, 15 years or so now. But in the mainstream, and especially in the accounting industry and within small business, it's still very new to us all. And so one of those issues is just structure. Again, your business structure will highly affect your strategy for Bitcoin. For example, if you have a S corporation or C corporation, um, many people don't know this. the S corporation in particular is an amazing tax strategy to reduce what's called self-employment tax. It's an additional 15.3% of income that a business owner might have. And so the S corp can help mitigate a significant portion of that. But what people don't realize is when you start adding property, including Bitcoin, into that, uh, when you have Bitcoin inside of an S corporation, anytime that you try to take that Bitcoin from the business and distribute to the business owner, it's unfortunately a taxable event. Now, it's not the end of the world that that's happening, because there's ways to mitigate and reduce or even completely eliminate the taxes on that. But it is a big consideration, knowing that from the get-go. And so I always recommend, if you're thinking about doing the S corporation route, you're paying you feel that you're paying too much in tax, definitely speak to someone qualified who can guide you through what that process looks like.
Hmm. Yeah, that's those are really important considerations. Um, your company is called Open Path Finance. I'm curious to maybe dig in on that side, and you talk a
On
lot
the naming,
about, yeah, on the naming and finding your path, maybe finding financial freedom. Like what does that mean to you, and how do you instill that in your day to day for your clients?
yeah. So I said a little bit of my story. Most of my career has been helping these high scaling companies, software startups. I was successful in that, leading the finance function within those teams, and I had a good rhythm. But after a while, I don't know, the prospect of uh, working for someone else, which there's no problem in working for someone else, but I think I'm going to speak to a select few here who might identify with this. I think there are people listening in uh, who are doing well at their jobs, but they know there's something more for them. They know there's a higher level. They just aren't quite sure what that looks like, and they feel stuck in their current situation. And so for me, what that looked like was I was in a job. I was highly paid, but still felt very stuck and capped also in my earning potential. Um, I felt like there was another path that I wanted to go on, and I wasn't quite sure what that looked like. But over the course of a few years, it slowly unfolded just with my first client, and then eventually taking this full time. That there was another path for me, and so really that path was wide open. And I think a lot of business owners feel that same tension of, they have a skill, they have a skill set that they know they could make money in, but they just don't know what the next step is. And I'd say my encouragement is, I think deep down, what that next step is, and what that next higher level looks like for you. Take that leap of faith. And so it's amazing just to see the group of clients that we have. They all have very similar stories when it comes to, that leap that they have when starting their business. And I'm sure I'd love to hear, from you as well, what that looked like for you. Well, I think you're muted, John.
Sorry. Yeah, I appreciate you turning the tables there, Arniel. Yes, I also worked a few W-2 jobs out of school, and learned a lot about the healthcare industry, doing strategy consulting for hospitals and health systems, and working for a big insurance company in Medicaid, and then in medical supplies. But really, it was when the pandemic hit, and was finishing up a master's in health economics and getting married, and just started asking that question: what is money? And that's what led me to Bitcoin, and ultimately here to Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador, and connecting with other Bitcoiners. So by the end of 2021, decided, when as my company was starting to call people back into the office, we were able to work remotely for about a year and a half, and It's like, and I love this lifestyle, I love the freedom, flexibility of being able to be where we want to be, and seeing that digital nomad thesis really playing out that was spelled out in the Sovereign Individual, 30 years ago, almost when that was published, where all we need is access to the internet. And now we have digital money in the form of Bitcoin that was also foreseen in that book, identifying and seeing, hey, here's this industry of healthcare where we're spending over $5 trillion a year, and a quarter of that is administrative, half of that is waste. And you have Bitcoin as an asset is still one and a half trillion. At the time, it was less in terms of the dollars of value that it's storing. And just a huge opportunity to bring Bitcoin into that sector and help ultimately individuals and then also business owners, but create a market, right? Have buyers and sellers come together in a real market, which is obfuscated or non-existent in a lot of healthcare transactions, where individuals don't know the cost or the price, and insurance just takes care of it. And even the producer of that good or service in the hospital doesn't understand their cost of production very well. So yeah, it's very much trying to find that, and then building on freedom technology ultimately, that I think can absolutely, as you said, find that freedom path that works for you. For many people, and you learn a lot maybe in the corporate side or in W-2 of a certain industry, but then being able to take that and apply it in creating new connections and opportunities, particularly on Bitcoin. And curious, in your perspective now, and you've seen established Bitcoin companies and maybe even tax strategies you can dig into in other sectors, like in the mining space or in energy. Are there components of Bitcoin and its tie to proof of work and physical energy and hash rate that maybe you steer or advise some of your clients to take advantage of on the mining side, whether that's as an individual or within one of these structures? Where is it more attractive? And maybe what are, for the listeners, some of the legislation on deductions that might be beneficial for folks to consider?
Yeah. So Bitcoin mining is actually one of our most popular strategies for clients who are seeking tax planning and advisory, and really wanting to reduce that tax burden. And the reason for that, it grew in popularity last year, 2025, with the One Big Beautiful Bill that the Trump administration passed into law. And one key section of that, probably the biggest section of that, that was a win for business owners, was the reintroduction of 100% bonus depreciation. Really, what that means, if an individual invests into a machinery or some sort of equipment, some sort of asset, they unfortunately can't write that off as a deduction all up front, not typically at least. But with 100% bonus depreciation, what they're now able to do is take that entire amount and write it off against their taxes for that year. And so I'll just provide what a typical client looks like, who's doing this. Let's say they are making $250,000 in W-2 income. They're going to have quite a big tax bill that year. And so what we help them do is, hey, how much in Bitcoin mining equipment do you want to invest in? Okay, let's take a look at that. Maybe it's $20,000, maybe it's $50,000 in mining equipment, and let's invest that into your new business. So now they're a business owner, able to control this investment or control this business, and then take that tax write-off that first year. So now, instead of $250,000 in taxable income, it's reduced down to $200,000 in taxable income, because now they've generated this paper loss or tax loss with the Bitcoin mining equipment. Not only do they have this tax loss that they're benefiting from, but now they are mining Bitcoin, KYC free Bitcoin at that. So they're earning an income from this business. And then also, they're able to enjoy the price appreciation from there as well. So again, highly popular strategy. Now, there's a lot that goes into it. There's what's called material participation, really just making sure that this is treated as a business and that you have the correct amount of hours put into this activity so that you are able to write it off against your W-2 income. But yeah, I saw, people saving 20, 30. I think the highest I saw last year was about $70,000
Wow.
in taxes saved. Now, of course, these are higher income individuals, maybe with businesses and real estate here and there. But, with that tax savings strategy alone, they were able to save tens of thousands of dollars.
Wow. That's really fascinating, great strategy, and curious if you generally steer folks then towards more of a hosted mining route, or people doing this on their own, or are there companies that you like to recommend for your clients on the mining side to take advantage of this kind of tax hack?
Yeah, definitely. So at this stage of the game, definitely the hosted route is the way to go. Unless you're willing to shell out a bunch of money to start your own site and infrastructure and start negotiating power rates with local power providers and play really the energy markets game, because that's what they're doing. They're doing an energy arbitrage, getting low rates from the energy producers and then providing those low rates to their hosted mining clients. So if that's a route someone wants to go, they can do that. But generally, I steer them towards, let's go with a hosted miner. It's really not profitable these days to mine at home, especially just with the infrastructure that they may or may not have available at home for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I was just out at Bitcoin is for Everyone in Portland, Oregon, hosted by Abundant Minds. They're doing amazing work using hydropower.
They're a great company.
They're awesome. Simple Mining's out of Iowa, using a lot of wind power. So yeah, there's some great mining companies I know are really taking advantage of that, the bonus depreciation. And I like to think that the HSA is in a similar bucket, again, of a strategy here that we can utilize to reduce your tax bill today while getting the upside of a longer term time horizon of holding Bitcoin and earning Bitcoin. And we were actually doing some hosted mining as well through Sound and paying out sats for steps for our customers, or for anyone globally. So not even just folks in the HSA, but anyone who's using our mobile app has been able to earn some sats that have actually been mined, and utilizing some of that tax strategy as the business.
I remember when you and I connected, it was at the Bitcoin for Financial Professionals conference last year in Denver. And so I was able to see that steps challenge, and it was fun. It was great.
Yeah. Get people outside, went on a nice hike, get people moving, fresh air. It's always a good balance from staring at the screen or the price charts. I'm curious because go ahead.
One quick comment. That's what I love about you guys and your organization is you're not only trying to help people with their HSA and the tax advantaged Bitcoin health savings account, but also like steering them towards these healthier choices, which, I think that's really the crux of this entire thing is how do we take our financial choices and our health choices back into our own hands.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It's something that has generally been delegated or outsourced in our current kind of health situation or healthcare payment situation here in this country, with 90% of healthcare payment being third party, whether that's the government or insurance, rather than 10% as an individual, which is still over $500 billion a year, which is kind of crazy. When you think about that, and also for your clients in your philosophy and towards building this financial freedom, you also talk a lot about building a legacy How do you help clients define what that means for them, and any sense of even succession planning or longer term inheritance or strategy around family offices or family businesses? Like, what is that? What do those conversations look like for you today in very much a fiat world where the profit
Hmm.
seeking and kind of high time preference compared with Bitcoin and you know lower time preference?
Yeah. Um, so this is going to look different for each person. Some people, Bitcoin is really the main vehicle for them when it comes to their estate planning. Some of them, it's what they're doing within their business, and maybe there's a Bitcoin component. But whatever that vehicle and that strategy looks like for someone, here's what I always recommend. I recommend this to pretty much everyone who comes in the doors and is in a consultation with me. I think when it comes to estate planning and thinking about the future, your children and future generations, it really starts with the revocable living trust. That's maybe one tactical thing that that I recommend everyone do. And the reason for that is this: definitely do your own research. I am not a lawyer, but I'm not an estate attorney. But the the concept of the revocable living trust, if someone passes away and they have assets, typically each state, the threshold is fairly small. It's maybe $50,000 in assets. If you think about, someone owns a house, someone owns cars, maybe they have some cash in their bank account. Not to mention now they have Bitcoin. That $50,000 goes away quickly. And so, practically speaking, almost anyone who passes away, um, what will happen is if they don't have a revocable living trust, when they pass away, their assets will be frozen, and it will then go into probate court. Their estate will go into probate court for a probate judge to then decide what to do with their assets. Now, a will helps in this process, but it doesn't circumvent this, unfortunately. A will help in the process for the judge to decide, okay, this heir gets this much, this heir gets this much, so on and so forth. And in the meantime, the bills still have to be paid for the house and mortgage or anything else that's happening within that estate. And their loved ones won't have access to these funds. And so, really,
Wow,
the loved ones are
that's
are
crazy.
left, yeah, bearing the cost on this. Not only the emotional burden, but the financial burden as well, until this is handled by probate court. I mean, we see popular cases with celebrities who did not have an estate plan, and there's a long, lengthy probate case, highly publicized, and different people coming in and fighting over, I deserve this and I deserve that.
Mm, wow.
Now enter in the revocable living trust. It is a simple document that gets enacted by an estate attorney. And really, the structure of this is, instead of me as Arniel Sia owning, I have an RV that I'm looking at. I have some land and property and Bitcoin. All of my assets, instead of them being owned by me legally, they're owned by my revocable living trust. And then I get to benefit from that trust, both my wife and I. Now, within this document, it then says, um, upon our passing, we have a trustee who will take over this estate, and there are directives on there on what to do with our assets. And so this gets to completely circumvent the probate court and the lengthy court costs and time it takes to get through that. So they're able to execute on that immediately. But not only that, there's also directives on there on, again, with my four children. If both my wife and I are either incapacitated or we end up passing away, what happens with our children? We have a section in there of, we have really good family members or really good friends who would take them on. Um, and take care of them. And of course, you can put in there, the annual stipend or annual amount to help care for them, and also for the person taking this on, a little bit of money there to get through that. But within this document, it's really yours for planning out how you want to pass on your estate, pass on your assets, especially with the Bitcoin. And that's probably that's a sticky subject. But there are a lot of companies who can help guide people through that process of actually thinking through, the key structure. I know Unchained has some of these uh, products, for inheritance planning when it comes to key structure and the multi-sig setup with estate planning.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we were thrilled to partner with Unchained and Gannett Trust, which is a Bitcoin native trust company out of Wyoming, alongside Horizon Trust, to actually hold our customers' Bitcoin in a multi-institutional, multi-signature vault and have that real Bitcoin in within the HSA structure. And what you're talking about here in the revocable living trust structure, also super important. And to your point, there's established companies and ways we can utilize Bitcoin and its native properties, particularly around multi-sig and keys and management, to safely and securely store that Bitcoin for generations to come and in that legacy building. So
Yeah. Well, out of curiosity, what does that look like for the user when they sign up with Sound HSA and the collaboration there with Unchained and Gannett Trust?
Yeah, so at this time, those three entities are each holding a key. So the user isn't holding a key now in an arrangement. At some point in the future, that's something we're definitely looking at, talking about, of making that available. So from an individual perspective, they're seeing that in the terms and conditions, and ultimately in opening up the HSA account with Horizon Trust. And then as individuals contribute funds in via ACH or wire or via payroll, right, it has to be dollars into the account. By Bitcoin, it's happening at Unchained's OTC desk and then put into the vault of the multi-institutional, multi-sig vault. So it's all individual. For what an individual sees is their balance, right? So there is a 1% buy and sell fee within the trading, which is pretty in line with Bitcoin exchange and being able to physically convert dollars into Bitcoin. But the beauty is it's not. We've removed layers of counterparty here, right? So it's real Bitcoin, and the plans in the future as well would be to demonstrate, show, hey, here's where the Bitcoin is, and if you want that, like Unchained offers on your IRA side, and split out into your own vault, that's something we could look at as well. HSA balances are typically lower than IRA balance due to the contribution limits per year: $4,400 a year for an individual, $8,750 for a family. That just got bumped up for next year in 2027 with inflation. They increase those amounts every year. Next year will be $4,500 for an individual, $9,000 for the family that you can contribute, again, tax deductible on the way in. But as Bitcoin grows over time, and as those balances warrant it, and individuals who already maybe are set up with Unchained and have keys, right? Okay, now we can really use Bitcoin to the fullest extent, as we've seen issues with trust companies and where is the Bitcoin over the last several years. Ultimately, it's not your keys, not your coins, but we want to have, and kind of marrying and where we're at now and why we think the HSA timing is right. These IRA products have been on the market for 10 plus years, and now it's time to do this with the HSA, which is, again, an existing product in the tax code, but being able to marry it with Bitcoin in this unique way. So that's what it looks like today. Got one more question for you, Arniel, before we wrap up. When it comes to businesses adopting Bitcoin, I've helped a lot of doctors and dentists and other business owners integrate and adopt Bitcoin for payment, saving in Bitcoin, marketing to Bitcoiners. For you, are a lot of your clients, are they already Bitcoiners, or are they existing clients and they're coming to you and saying, I want to start holding Bitcoin on our balance sheet. How do I do that? What does that starting point look like for you? Are you doing kind of some orange pilling yourself, or there are people who are out there already getting orange pilled and needing help to integrate it into their business and tax strategy, but maybe are already personally there? Are you helping people personally kind of take the orange
Yeah.
pill?
Well, being a Bitcoin accounting firm, most of the people coming to us, they're already hardcore Bitcoiners, or at least they're familiar with Bitcoin and just need that extra push and help and guidance on how to apply that when it comes to these tax structures or these business accounts. But the interesting part is this year, we're doing a big push in expanding our channels, particularly with advertising. And I think pretty soon here, a lot of my conversations are going to be shifting from, people who are very familiar with Bitcoin to people who might have heard about Bitcoin. They're interested in knowing how they can use it. So I think a lot more orange pilling is going to happen here in the future. But it's quite interesting because with so I'm partnered with two Bitcoin mining companies in particular. One of them is Megawatt, and another one is Blockware. And with the leads that come in from those partnerships, it's interesting because I get a mix of people who are, again, hardcore Bitcoiners, or people who are just new to the Bitcoin world. And I'd say there's probably more of those people who came in last year just with the new tax bill and bonus appreciation and wanting to take advantage of that. I can only imagine, maybe even with Sound HSA, and as we continue along the next few years, it's going to skew more into people who have a maybe small cursory knowledge of Bitcoin, but can see and start to understand its future and the path that they want to take. And uh, I think our companies and anyone else in this community will be taking it up on ourselves to help bring them into the fold and into the community.
Absolutely. Well, really appreciate your insights and wisdom today, Arniel. Where can people find you? How should folks get in touch with you if they want to reach out and get some Bitcoin
Yeah,
tax strategy?
you can find me on X and Substack at Arniel Cia. You can also just type in the Sovereign CPA. That's an easy way to find me on those platforms as well. And then if you are needing help with tax advisory and you know that you're overpaying on taxes, you can visit us at openpathfinance.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for hopping on. It's been great partnering with you, and seeing this overlap of more and more products that are coming out that can take advantage of Bitcoin, of tax strategy, and at the same time get some extra tax advantage sats and increase Bitcoin adoption, which is, I think, ultimately the beauty of Bitcoin is that there's only 21 million Bitcoin, but it's an open network, and anybody can opt in and make this decision at any point. So we're here to help, and looking forward to seeing you hopefully at a Bitcoin event here soon.
Will do. Well, appreciate it, John.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.